Hey there, guys. All right, today we are watching a channel that I have not watched in a really long time. A video that I thought I had already watched, but maybe I had watched it on my own time and not reacted it to you for you guys here. Or maybe I clicked on it and then never watched it. I don't remember. But today it is a video on estimating deaths in a nuclear war. This will be a very cheerful video. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Shadow Peace.
Every second, on average, 4.6 people are born into the world. That's 140 million births a year. There are currently over 7 billion people alive today.
You get this video, you can tell how old this video is because in the last couple of years we crossed the 8 billion threshold. Oh,
Humans
that's a
are
cool
dying
visual.
at less than half the rate we're being born.
What was that?
Humans are dying at less than half the rate we're being born. About 2 die every second, which is 60 million deaths a year. And the difference between the birth rate and the death rate tells us how fast the world's population is growing. We're gaining about 2.5 people per second, or 83 million a year. And as for those who are no longer living, the Population Reference Bureau came up with 108 billion for the total number of humans who have ever lived and died on Earth.
Damn.
They used 50,000 years ago as the start date for Homo sapiens. Now let's arrange the sand into groups
God, I love this visualization, man. Oh, Neil Halloran, you beautiful bastard.
of 1 million people. 7 billion is 7,000 millions. And then arrange the living by their age. Doing so creates what's called a population pyramid, though it's usually shown the other way around and separated by gender. We'll want to keep the oldest sand on the bottom. We'll arrange the dead based on how long ago they died. The spike in deaths during World War II is visible even at this scale.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Because it all happened in just
But
6
also
years,
fucked up.
no other war we know of could leave such a dramatic scar on our living record. No wars so far.
What about Genghis Khan? Would you be able to map when Genghis Khan had come through? Or even the Black Plague, Black Death?
A nuclear war, especially one that erupted late in the Cold War, could have been much worse. You can pause to explore the stories behind these so-called close calls. Some were closer than others, but it's hard to know how close we came or how many people would have died. One way to study World War III casualties is to first look at what atomic weapons did to people in Japan in 1945, and then scale up. About a third of the population of both cities were killed. 90% of deaths occurred with.
See, that's the crucial statistic. It's not right. We're seeing the number killed, right? And that is a good number to know. But the most important thing there is the percentage of the total population that were killed. And that paints a much clearer picture of the scale of a nuclear war, nuclear bomb. It's something that I had been wanting from that other video that we had watched regarding modern nukes. I had been wanting to, like, that video did not really paint a clear picture as to their genuine scale. Whereas this paints a very clear picture as to the power of a nuclear bomb dropped on a population center in the 1940s, right? A third were killed.
Within the first 3 weeks. While long-term effects of radiation, such as cancer, killed thousands across decades, it accounted for a small portion of the victims. And on the other end, only a minority of those who died were killed instantly from the blast. Most deaths occurred between the first few hours and the first few weeks due to burns, blast injuries, collapsed structures, and radiation sickness. A broad term that describes a whole array of terrible symptoms, and a slow killer. Even those with high exposure didn't die for 5 to 6 days.
Ugh. Grueling last final days.
The bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were small by today's standards.
And this is the kind of map visualization I was wanting as well.
The hydrogen bombs developed years later have 10 times the radius of destruction.
Oh, see? Immediately, they are putting it over, they are overlaying a more modern bomb on a historical place in which we know the statistical what happened. We know the destructive power, right? We have seen the destructive power with our own eyes. And so overlaying, yes, and this helps establish scale as well by comparing it to an older one like this in this way. Yes.
But it's not the size of the bombs that makes calculating World War III deaths so daunting. It's the number of warheads in play.
Oh shit, Aurora. Now, the question though becomes, right, every time when nuclear war is talked about, it is always, almost always assumed that it is population centers that will be targeted. And of course, that does make sense to target population centers. And I think we assume the population centers because that is what was done in World War II, right? In striking the right? We struck Hiroshima and Nagasaki because one, they were military, important military places, but they were also significant. Like there were two factors to them. They had a military significance, and they were sizable population centers in Japan. And I'm sure probably some other reason that the military gives. But I kind of modern nuclear war, I don't think this is necessarily what will happen. Now, I do think places like probably like Houston, cities on the East Coast, I think New York, Washington D.C. for sure, and some places like a city in Maryland that I cannot remember the name, but is where like the U.S. Naval Academy is. I think Chicago will also get hit because there is like I think some Naval Academy maybe stuff up there. But I think out here maybe like I think the focus would be on eliminating a rival country's nuclear arsenal, and the United States has sacrificed a few specific states in that case, and that would be the Great Plains over here, in which this is where I think the majority of our nuclear arsenal is located, because you're going to want to eliminate as much as possible the enemy's capability to respond to your strike as soon as possible. And then afterwards, I think, is when strikes on population centers will happen. But I think if you eliminate an enemy's nuclear capabilities, you are then not going to continue to nuke them. Maybe that's just my optimism for for a nuclear war. But yeah, I mean, oh, yep, see, The hyper. I like this. Okay, so I'm assuming that we're seeing a hyper concentration here in Colorado. Is this one Montana? Oh man, I don't remember my states in the Great Plains. But these are being hyper focused because that is where our nuclear warheads are, or where we believe, or where we're told they are. Probable targets, okay, as suggested by the United Kingdom. Map leaked, so that would have been, well, okay. A leak could be distrustful, right? This could be like a false thing to create paranoia in during the Cold War, to maybe make the NATO hyperfixate on the defenses of these areas, whereas the Russians' real target was somewhere else. This is me thinking 5D chess here. There's a chance this was the real target. United States target was, oh my god. Oh my god, we're just nuking every fucking city. Oh my god. Oh my god.
The death count for the first 3 weeks of a nuclear war will depend on how many warheads launched and how many successfully hit their targets.
Hold on, I'm gonna go back to the US map. I want to see. This was FEMA and NRDC. I don't know those organizations.
For the first 3 weeks of a nuclear war will depend on how many warheads launched and how many successfully hit their targets. If we went with a round number on the high end, let's look at what 500 million deaths would look like.
Oh.
Almost 10 World War IIs in 3 weeks.
This is such a good. He's so good at visualizing statistics.
Then something would have occurred that didn't happen in Japan. Because the bombs would have been so much larger, and because many would have targeted underground missile silos, scientists believe the explosions would have propelled enough dust and ash into the atmosphere to block out much of the Earth's sunlight. The radioactive fallout would have been deadly for a week or two, but the darkness and freezing temperatures could have decimated agriculture and food supplies for many years. We won't even see at a guess at what a nuclear winter or nuclear famine would have done to the world's population. With so much uncertainty, most scientists won't even throw out a number.
Yeah.
So we'll have to end our count there, at just 3 weeks into the nightmare.
Oh.
Contrary to a popular notion, even a full-scale nuclear war is unlikely to wipe out the human race. As the number of warheads increased during the arms race, so did the death count in a worst-case scenario. Since the Soviet Union collapsed, the number of bombs has been coming down. While there isn't a direct relationship between the number of warheads and the number of deaths.
Oh, damn, this video was made back when Obama was still president, or I'm assuming at least the numbers available were during the Obama presidency.
Nuclear disarmament has reduced the potential human cost of a nuclear war in a very real way. But there are still enough bombs today to kill hundreds of millions of people, and more than enough to create the conditions of a nuclear winter. Today, there are 9 countries who have nuclear weapons.
Is Israel confirmed? I always thought it was not technically officially confirmed, but like as confirmed as it can be without them
This number has
stating.
not increased for decades. South Africa was once on the list, but they shut their program down.
Well, they were kind of racism shut it down because they did not want a black country to have nukes.
The vast majority of countries in the world have decided not to go nuclear. A possible partial...
Hold on, is Iran I don't think Iran has said that they want to go nuclear. They're just not being allowed to go nuclear.
explanation for this is that the United States and other countries have worked to keep this number down. Countries like North Korea and Iran get a lot of news coverage, but the U.S. has also worked to disincentivize allies from getting the bomb, using such tools as the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and nuclear alliances. Under the rules of NATO, for example, the nuclear members provide deterrence for everyone else, which means, in theory, each country doesn't need its own bomb. The U.S. provides similar protection to allies outside of NATO, including Japan, South Korea, and Australia. In addition to disarmament and non-proliferation, there are other steps that may further reduce the risk of a nuclear war, such as a no-first-strike policy. Many of these ideas are controversial, and some may be unwise. You can pause to learn more about their pros and cons.
And this is why this video is not fear-mongering, right? He is spending more time talking about de-escalating fears here of like, here are the safeguards that we have in place in regards, and here's what the countries of the world are actively doing to lower the chance of a nuclear winter. Now, of course, things have changed since this video was released, and so there's a bit more uncertainty today than I would say that there was in 2015. But, right, like, he is still, this video is still good. Right, it's not like, he's not spending the time to show like, oh, here's how many people would die if when this city gets hit or whatever by this nuclear weapon. He is showing us the stats and all. Oh, this is so good.
Even without taking most of these steps, many foreign policy experts will say that the risk of a full-scale war is less today than it was at the height of the Cold War, though it is certainly not at zero. Some believe the risk has grown. It certainly could grow if people become less scared of nuclear war and less steadfast in efforts to prevent it. Experts will also point out that improving relationships between countries is just as important, if not more so, than policies specific to nuclear weapons, which is important to consider when assessing something as complicated as NATO.
Make friends. Friendship will save us all.
There's no simple answer for achieving peace, but there is a simple hope. If we're clever enough to design such sophisticated weapons, we might also be clever enough to ensure we never use them. Now, our weapons are undeniably powerful. They dazzle us and remind us of our human potential. Instruments for preventing war are usually mundane, and if powerful, they tend to go unnoticed. If taking one of these steps prevented a catastrophe, we'd probably never know it.
Yes. Oh my god, this video is a 10 out of 10.
And that's what makes it so hard to prove what works in preventing war. But sometimes, when there's enough data available, you can see patterns emerge from the numbers. As an example, let's take a rare category of peacemaking that's actually tangible and exciting. Peacekeepers. Men and women who go into conflict areas to help prevent war from occurring or reoccurring. During the Cold War, the aim of peacekeepers was primarily to prevent a nuclear war. And after 1989, a new era in peacekeeping emerged. Missions became more focused on civil wars and more directly involved in the peace process. But does it work? Paige Fortna, a researcher at Columbia University, analyzed 94 cases after 1989, where there's a civil war followed by a spell of peace. Sometimes the fighting ended when one side defeated the other. Other ceasefires were more tenuous. And the peace that followed ranged from brief pauses in the fighting to decades of peace still holding today. In 36 of these cases, peacekeepers were present during the peaceful period.
And look, oh wow, this is a beautiful graph. Yes!
And they were not always successful. Sometimes war returned despite their efforts. Opponents point to these failures as evidence that peacekeeping does not work. And at a glance, it's not obvious that it does. Fortner ran statistical analysis to find out what factors predicted longer spans of peace. First, note that our findings on factors outside of peacekeeping
Decisive victory, longer peace, more death, shorter peace, longer war, longer peace. Prior to low effect. Well, that's interesting. Okay, infant mentor. Oh, also interesting. Richer countries, longer peace. Lootable resources, shorter peace. Yep, treaty sign, longer.
were pretty
This is
consistent
so
with other
good.
studies. You can pause to learn more.
This is so good, dude. Oh, wow.
Fortner found that peacekeeping had a significant effect on the staying power of peace. War was about a quarter as likely to reoccur when peacekeepers were present. Even with the small sample size, she could claim with confidence that post-Cold War peacekeeping correlated with longer peace. Despite such findings, many policymakers remain unconvinced, and the general public, in the US anyway, shows little enthusiasm for supporting
It's because it doesn't benefit U.S. interests. That's
peacekeeping missions. While few would ever question the scientific methods used to develop our weapons, many are skeptical about statistics and the science of less tangible things like peace.
we are so bad at looking long term, right? The instruments of war give us very tangible short term effects that we can easily grasp. Peace is something that is ever ongoing, right? It is a constant effort as people continue to as people and their cultures continue to change and develop over time. And things are uncovered and just it's
And such doubts help fuel the argument that the only real instruments of peace are instruments of war, that peace can only be achieved by fortifying borders, strengthening armies, and winning arms races. That nuclear weapons are the reason there has not been a major war since World War II. There's truth to many such theories. But I should tell you up front that this filmmaker believes in instruments of peace. That they
and there's another thing that keeps this video from feeling like a fear-mongering video. Again, throughout this video, very little was actually about estimating the deaths in a nuclear winter. We spent, what, 2 minutes probably on it? And he was just like, here, based on these reports and these leaked documents and these declassified documents, these are the places where strikes are expected to hit in a full-blown, worst-case scenario sort of nuclear war. And here is the immediate deaths that will occur from it. We cannot estimate any further than that because just the sheer catastrophe that would be a nuclear winter is impossible to predict. And that's where they left it. They didn't try to predict what is essentially unpredictable. Beautiful.
they are real, that they are powerful, and that you can see them working if you're willing to look at the numbers. And in this series, we'll aim to bring peacemaking efforts into light with all the drama they deserve. To learn about future
this
episodes
channel.
and how you can support this audience-funded series, please visit.
And that was Estimating Deaths in a Nuclear War by Neil Halloran. Honestly, every video that I have watched of his is a 10 out of 10. His way of explaining and showing what he is explaining is just, I feel like, unmatched. I don't think I've never seen anyone else make graphs so easily understandable at just an immediate first look than like graphs are simple, right? Graphs aren't too hard to read, but it's still it still takes a lot of skill to make them something that you can just look at and immediately understand what is being shown to you. And Neil is so fucking good at I gotta see what other videos of his that I have not yet watched and just watch them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And this is like this. What I love about this video is it has a hopeful message, right? It's not fear mongering in any way. It's like nuclear war, bad. This is the potential of the immediate that can die. But here are efforts that we have taken as humanity on a whole, on a widespread scale, that do not involve war, and how they have worked, and the actual tangible statistics of they are working. Just need more people to support them, and then they would work probably even better. Yeah, I got nothing else to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.